From Pacifica Network, this is Democracy Now!
We have two systems going on here. One for ordinary Americans. The government takes the money out of your check. It knows what you make. You can't cheat. And another for very wealthy people who are connected who don't want to pay taxes.
Who pays taxes and who doesn't? We'll speak with David K. Johnson. 12 Palestinians were killed overnight. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. The income gap in the United States is greater than many imagine. The top 29,000 Americans have as much income as the bottom 96 million. In recent years, tax burden for the richest Americans, especially corporations, has been falling sharply while everyone else's has risen. A study by the General Accounting Office found almost two-thirds of America's corporations paid no federal income taxes during the late 90s when corporate profits were soaring. 9 out of 10 companies paid less than the equivalent of 5% of their total income. A new book by Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times reporter David K. Johnston argues that most Americans are, quote, being duped into supplementing the incomes and extravagant lifestyles of the rich and powerful. The book is titled Perfectly Legal, the Covert Campaign to Rig Our Tax System to Benefit the Super Rich and Cheat Everybody Else. Last month, Johnston was awarded top honors at the 2003 Investigative Reporters and Editors Awards for Perfectly Legal. I began by asking David K. Johnston about just how the tax system works.
Most Americans, no matter what they make, assume that people who make more pay a larger share of their income in federal taxes. That would be a progressive tax system. We don't have that. If you made $60,000 last year, you paid a larger share of your income in income taxes and Social Security taxes to the government than people who made more than $10 million a year. And that top group's average income, by the way, was $25.6 million. If you made $400,000, and that's a lot of money, but if you made $400,000, you paid a larger share of your income just in income taxes than people who made more than $10 million. That is, people who made in a week what you worked for all year. And we are shifting the burden of taxes steadily off the richest people in America and onto people who work. The very top taxpayers, the 400 highest income taxpayers in America, their taxes have gone from 30 cents on the dollar, which doesn't strike me as an onerous burden, 30 cents on the dollar back in 1993 when the Clinton administration began, down to 22 cents on the dollar at the end of the Clinton administration, and now under the Bush administration they're down to 17.5 cents on the dollar. Everybody else in America during those years, their taxes went up from 13 cents on the dollar overall to 15.
Who's doing this?
Both parties are doing this. They're doing it because they're listening to a narrow group of very well-to-do people who do not want to pay taxes, who do not want to share in the expenses of the country that has made them rich, and they want you to pay their taxes. Those are the people who get access. Every politician will say to you, you can't buy my vote. And generally that's true. The problem is that you and I don't have real access. And the proof that Congress is thinking about the super rich came 2 days after 9/11. The House Republican leadership introduced 10 bills to address 9/11, and one of them was a tax bill. And so what did it do? It gave estate tax relief, which did absolutely nothing for the firefighters and the police officers and the Army sergeants at their desk and the nurses and the busboy at the World Trade Center and all those other people who were killed. A tiny handful of people. But that's what Congress thought these people needed, was estate tax relief, even though 99% of them wouldn't pay estate taxes.
So it's just slipping it in at a very opportune time.
Well, that was just for this group of people. That was just for this group of people, but it's indicative of what Congress is thinking about. What's on the minds of Congress are not the concerns of ordinary Americans who want to educate their children, who want to engage in enjoying life. Their concerns are about the super rich, and within the super rich, those who are very anti-tax.
Can you talk about the CEO of Coca-Cola?
Oh, sure. He's indicative of a major problem that many workers don't understand is affecting them. Roberto Gotsueta, during the years that he ran Coca-Cola, built a $1 billion untaxed fortune. And the way that he did that is having a serious effect on ordinary workers. All across America, senior executives have unlimited 401k plans. There's a special law for them. Ordinary Americans are allowed to save up to $13,000, or if you're my age, $16,000. But let's say you're the CEO of a big company and you get paid $105 million, and this is already an outrageous amount of money. You take $5 million of it in cash, you pay the taxes on it. That's about $1.7 million. So your effective tax rate is less than 2% of your income. The other $100 million stays on deposit with the company. The company invests it on your behalf, and you take the money when you're ready to retire. The problem is the company doesn't get to take a deduction for that $100 million, so it has to pay the government $35 million in taxes. Well, every year, senior executives add to these accounts, and there are lots of them, not just the CEO. Pretty soon the company comes to the workers and says, you know, Amy, we know you've had this health care plan, but we just can't afford it anymore. It's too expensive. Or that pension plan you were counting on, well, we're going to freeze it when you're 52 years old, so you're only going to get a third of the benefit you were expecting at retirement because we can't afford it. Competitive pressure. It's the competitive pressure from the guys in the executive suite going into the pay pool and gouging it. It's not from the people down the street. And Congress could stop this in a minute. And furthermore, raise revenue by saying there's no more deferrals.
Can you talk about Dick Cheney and his deferred payment plan from Halliburton, the fact that this man is the sitting vice president of the United States and continues to be paid off by...
No, he cashed out of his plan except for his pension, which would not make him in a position any different than anyone else.
But he is getting an annual paycheck from Halliburton still to this day.
Or he will when he turns 65. I'm not sure if he's 65 years old yet. Actually, that doesn't trouble me. He's cut all his other ties to the company. What should trouble people is here's a guy who, in a very short period of running this company, built up a $36 million cash-out plan when he left, and set up, I forget exactly how many, but many, many offshore vehicles that were designed basically to avoid taxes. Almost every big corporation in America now is using a variety of devices, from renting a mailbox in Bermuda to moving their intellectual property offshore to avoid taxes. And we just had a report from the investigative arm of Congress, the General Accounting Office, that 60% of American corporations paid no corporate income tax between 1996 and 1970.
Say that again.
60% of large corporations paid no federal corporate income tax from 1996 to 2000, that 5-year period.
How does that work? What do you mean they just get a foreign post office box?
Well, 2 years ago, I broke the story in the New York Times about companies going to Bermuda. Ingersoll Rand, for example, went to Bermuda. They're the people who built the jackhammer that carved the face of Mount Rushmore. They didn't go to Bermuda. Their headquarters is still in New Jersey. The Bermuda government, in return for a fee of $27,000, allows them to be a Bermuda company prohibited from doing business in Bermuda. They then send one executive to Barbados, and under a treaty that dates to the Cold War, the company is then able to take its profits in the U.S. and convert them into tax-deductible expenses, send them to Barbados, and put the money wherever they want in the world and stop paying U.S. income taxes on their profits. And in the process, they shift the burden of government off of them and onto you. So they get all the benefits of being here, the courts to enforce their contracts and access to the American market, the military to protect their assets, but you and I get the bill.
Enron.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us about Enron and taxes?
Well, Enron was an extreme example of taxes. Their tax department was turned into a profit center. And the people in the tax department were expected to turn up profits. Here's a little known fact for you. Enron, although people think of it as a Texas company, it is actually an Oregon public utility holding company. And it bought Portland General Electric. And since 1997, the people and businesses in Portland have paid about $620 million in their electric rates that were supposed to pay the state and federal income taxes of Portland General Electric. But Portland General Electric just shipped the money upstairs to Enron. Enron paid no taxes. Imagine how rich you could get if you could buy a business which the law says you will collect the income taxes for the corporation from your customers as a specific amount of money, and then you get to pocket it. That's what Enron did.
We're talking to David K. Johnston. Perfectly Legal is his new book, The Covert Campaign to Rig Our Tax System to Benefit the Super Rich and Cheat Everybody Else. As you researched this book, what most surprised you?
Oh, that the middle class and the upper middle class literally subsidize the wealthiest people in America. If you're making $50,000 a year, the federal government will take about $2,000 from you this year, or as President Bush would say, $2,000 of your money, and funnel it to the super rich through overtaxing you on Social Security. Americans are paying in advance for their Social Security benefits up to the limit on Social Security incomes. That money is being used to finance tax cuts for the super rich, who in 10 or 15 or 20 years will have to pay higher taxes to get that money back. So the time value of about $1.8 trillion is being transferred from the middle class to the super rich. The other thing that astonished me is the stealthy way that the Bush tax cuts were financed. The Bush tax cuts include a $500 billion increase on middle class and upper middle class Americans, particularly families with children. You're 30 times more likely to pay this stealth tax increase if you have children than if you're single, which totally is against the rhetoric that you're hearing from the administration. And under the law that the administration relied on, if you become ill or your spouse or child does, and you spend more than 7.5% of your income trying to keep your loved one or yourself alive, Congress taxes you for doing that. It increases your income taxes, and it uses that money to finance tax cuts for the super rich. That's just outrageous.
David K. Johnston, author of Perfectly Legal, Pulitzer Prize-winning New York Times reporter. And that does it for today's program. If you'd like to get a copy, you can call 1-800-881-2359. That's 1-800-881-2359. Or you can order it through our website at democracynow.org, as well as sign up for our daily digest, news headlines and media alerts, as well as go to our website for the latest information and contact information. Exception to the Rulers Media and Book Tour continues on Wednesday night in Pleasantville, New York at the Jacob Burns Center, beginning at 5:30, showing the film The Revolution Will Not Be Televised, followed by Independent Media in a Time of War, produced by the Hudson Mohawk Indie Media Center, and I'll be speaking there as well. Jacob Burns Center, Pleasantville, New York. That does it for the show. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Berkshrew, Bill Caduce, Anna Nagara, Elizabeth Press, John Hamilton, Jeremy Scahill, Mike DeFilippo, our engineer, with help from Rich Kim. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.